Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of I Would Like to Have a Conversation. And it's Christmas time here right now, so I'm sharing some podcasts over the next couple of weeks about like where I've gone and talked on someone else's podcast, or just throwing up a replay of an episode that I thought was really powerful and could be useful around this time of year, like New Year's resolutions and things coming up. So this week I'm sharing a podcast I did with Dusty and Rick, where it's Dusty's podcast, and basically we talked about like a lot about like guilt and shame and about how to take control of your how you feel around things and your decisions, and don't let other people steal your power to pressure you into doing things you don't really want to do and feel guilty about the goals that you have and the life you want to live. So we go through like a personal experience I had and Rick had, what it kind of did, and it's sort of more suited to like the 2020s crowd, where Rick and I give our perspective as guys in our 30s and 40s, and how to build resilience. First, like how to set goals that you really want to have, but also build resilience around what it is you want to do. It's a really cool episode. It was a fun chat. We go pretty deep, but yeah, check it out. Let me know what you think. Go check out Dusty's podcast. It's in the show notes. And then you can listen to the other episodes that he did. Thanks, guys.
Whenever I see countdowns, so I'm just going to go. So, Chris, I'm just going to say thanks again. I have to, and I'm not going to stop thanking you for showing up. That's a big deal for you.
Thank you, brother.
And us. I think it's cool, and I think your message is underrated and over needed and underheard. So I want to make sure that it gets spread as much as I can. So if you can, kind of give me a rundown, and everybody's listening, who you are, where can we see you, what's your message and your goal, and what are you about?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. So, Chris Forrest, I live in Albury-Wodonga, which is like on the border of New South Wales, Victoria, and Australia. There's a big highway that goes from Melbourne to Sydney, and we're on the border town. And I've lived here since 2001. And in that time of being here, I've gone through, like in my 20s, I was an alcoholic, bought a house while under the influence of alcohol, and was doing all right, juggling it all at the same time. But then I just started using the money I was meant to use for the house on alcohol. It was in the time of like when credit card companies were just throwing credit cards at people. So I was just collecting credit cards to get more money to drink. And eventually got to a point where I lost the house, lost lots of friendships, lost relationships as well, and ended up like 300 and something grand in debt. And then it was weird, like so many people were telling me, my partner and everything, and it was weird. Like my boss at the time at a steel shop was the one that got me to decide to make a change. He brought me into the office and he goes, "Look, I've been covering your ass for like 4 or 5 years now. I'm going to have to fire you." And it was the threat of him firing me from a job I didn't even really want to be at was the thing that made me want to change. And then that's where I pivoted, and because I have like an addictive personality, or I would say I used to have an addictive personality where I took that addiction of alcohol and I went into training really, really hard. And then to train really, really hard and get to the level of fitness that I wanted to get at, I took a lot of pre-workout. And then, funnily enough, I got addicted to pre-workouts. And there was a supplement that came out at the time called Craze, where the owner eventually went to jail because it had MDMA basically inside this supplement. We like, it's a funny story. The local soccer team I play for, I got them all hooked on this pre-workout and we won a league on it. It was so bad. But yeah, people were doing like multiple tubs in a row and never sleeping for 16 hours. It was a super strong pre-workout, and I ended up burning out in hospital. I fell asleep in the car, spun out and just missed a tree. Went to hospital because like I don't know what's going on, and I just crashed. So that happened. Then I met Kat during that time as well. Also, just after giving up alcohol, I met Kat. So all this stuff was kind of happening at the same time, and we started a family while having heaps of debt, while being a guy juggling addictions, and then starting a family. There's still heaps of stuff in there as well. But then I had gyms. Once I quit drinking, I started training myself, fell in love with it. The transformation that a lot of us get, we want to help other people. So I became a PT, opened a gym, got really, really big, burnt out, partnered up with another guy who was a really good friend. So I closed my gym and partnered with his. He ended up being bipolar, and we lasted 3 months. He wanted to fight me in the middle of a group class one time just because he just flipped his lid on something. So 3 months into doing that, we built it up really big as well. 3 months into that, I had to pack up my stuff and get out. A month later, Kat and I got married. So it was like a month before we got married. And then I just sort of went to a shell. Kind of did my own thing. Worked online, coaching for a bit. And then started going back and training people in person and just worked for another gym. And I did that for a very long time. Theo was born a year later, was a stay-at-home dad mainly, and did bits and pieces of training people. Built up my online coaching to a pretty decent level, coaching parents. It was called Fit Parents Made Simple back then. And then it changed to, well, that was based off the company name called CJ Rubric, which was the worst name ever. My nickname is CJ, and a rubric is like a teaching tool that no one knows about, so it was a terrible name. And then all that sort of, Ruby came along, I was still working online. Just before COVID, I built up semi-private training inside the gym I was working for. I was renting space, and we built up to like 100. I built up to 100 semi-private clients. It was going really well. Went away for Chrissy. Come back in March. Was doing it like through to March, and then COVID hit. And the rules in Australia, even though this facility was massive, you could fit 300 people in it. You weren't allowed to have more than 20 people in one space. So this huge facility, 20 people. So to keep training my clients, I had to open up another facility, which I said I'd never do. But at the time, we didn't know what was going to happen with COVID. So I was like, I need to do this because I don't want to lose or let down these people. So in COVID, opened a gym and built up to 180 clients. And then that was in 2021. I got to 180 in March. And then, because we're a border town, it would be Melbourne was open, Victoria was open, and New South Wales was closed. Or New South Wales was open, Victoria was closed. So it was just like flip-flopping for COVID lockdowns. And we went from 180 clients. We did like this big special of paid in fulls to go get a bunch of gear. So we went and bought all this gear to train these clients. And literally 2 weeks later, New South Wales shut down, so our gym had to shut. And it shut for 12 weeks. Worst timing ever. And then it was just like, we went from 180 down to 100 really quickly. Then we went to 80, then we went to 60, then we went to 40. And then eventually Australia brought a rule in. Like if you didn't have your 2 jabs, you couldn't open your business. And if you didn't have your 2 jabs, you couldn't go into a business. You had to stay home. And that came out and that shut us. We just shut the doors. We're like, there's no way we can do this. So we shut it. And get this again, 2 weeks later, they reversed that decision and opened it up for everybody. So it was less like, we just got slammed non-stop. But in that time, I missed seeing the kids grow up because the border crossings made the living on the border really hard. So I'd leave at 3 a.m. and get home at like 9 p.m. Go to sleep and go again, just because I wasn't able to cross the border. If I went over, I had to stay there and then come straight home. So I missed the kids for like 2 years, and I just burnt out. So shut it all down, went online, coached dads online for about a year and a half, and then the guy who was mentoring me to be an online coach, I started working for him, and I started mentoring other clients, other coaches to help more people. And that's kind of led to where I met Rick. And I wanted to find more tools of kind of like, there's tools everywhere. Everyone knows what they need to be doing, but they're not doing it. So over like the 10 years of me being a PT, I've been trying to figure out why aren't people doing it and how can we facilitate a space where they can. So learning habit coaching, even learning things like persuasion and mindset coaching, performance coaching, all that kind of stuff. And I ran into Rick when I was looking down the guidance route and learned to become a guidance coach, and we did a cohort together. And in that time, I started working with my mindset performance coach inside a men's group. and learning tools from him too. And then that was kind of like that missing piece of the puzzle where it sort of connects all the dots of like, these are all these tools, which had been known forever. Well, not forever, but everyone knows these tools, but it's like that everyone's looking for something like a magic bullet, when really the magic bullet is just the mind and the stories. If we can change that, nearly every tool works. So that's where Rick and I sort of kind of like fell into Space Builders because we were doing it for ourselves. We're creating a space for us to create our own perfect life and what tools we need for that. And then mindset performance coaching ourselves to get it. And then we're like, so many people need this. And that's where we kind of kicked off Space Builders. So that's a big story arc. But yeah, there's lots of things I missed, but that's the majority of it.
There's so much there. There's so much there, but it's like there's so many questions off of that I want to ask. And I mean, the biggest thing that came to mind aside was all of those things aren't exactly tranquil and peaceful. There was so much stress
No.
involved in that whole arc. How did you end up managing all of that? You have a dad, you have these business endeavors that you're trying to juggle. You have a wife. Well, at that time, you had a significant other that then turned into a wife. You had a house that was coming. You had kind of this financial burden. How did you manage all this stress? Like that's just a huge burden that I keep thinking of. I'm like, man, none of this is easy. And then also, if you're leaving at 3 a.m. and coming home at 9 p.m, you're not getting any rest either. So you're burning the candle on every end possible.
Yeah. Like I burnt out often because my personality trait is I'm kind of introverted. So even having a gym, you got to be like super you're basically the motivation for everybody else. What gyms really are is like they pay you to be their motivation so they can just show up and you motivate them through. That's what 100% in-person coaching is so good at. If you really need a motivation kick, you don't know how to find it, you go to a gym and they do it for you. You just outsource it. But I used to be cooked. Like I'll coach in the morning, get over at 3, open the gym up and coach for 3 to 4 hours and just completely collapse on the gym floor. I put the roller down on the floor, the aircon and the fan straight on me, and I'll just lie there and fall asleep. And then I'd get back up, take oodles amounts of caffeine and swing back into it for the afternoon. So all that stress, like I was training through it to try and manage the stress, but it didn't really work because training is a stress in itself. So I was putting stress on top of stress on top of stress, and I didn't have the space to unpack the stuff that's going on. So I fell into depression a lot, but I could mask it with my personality when I used to coach people. If people used to think I was just always bubbly and always fun all the time. But when I was home, I was just a zombie. I didn't want to talk, didn't want to open up to people, could barely, like when the kids were like real little and just babies and they couldn't talk, it was fine because I'd just lie with them and lie on the floor and play. And that would be how I would recharge and go again. But I didn't really deal with shit very well. And it wasn't until like the beginning of last year where I completely stepped away from everything, just did my stuff for the other coaches. I shut down the dads program, worked on the other coaches with their marketing, and I stepped away from social media and everything. Deleted all my social medias off my whatever tools I use, like phone and everything, and just disappeared and just focused on going to therapy, unpacking all the shit that's happened through my life, and then really using the tools that I use now that I was taught from way back when I was an alcoholic and all the way up until now, just to try and, like a better word, feel good. And feel good as often as I can. I don't know if that answered the question or not.
That did, and some. And I think my follow-up question, which is great that you talked about this, was, this comes from me, is I have family members that are, I have a genetic proclivity to substance abuse as well. I have it on both sides. So I know from my end what that looks like. And I want to know, kind of moving forward through your life, how did you build the trust in yourself again to be able to kind of move through life in a healthier manner, in a healthier way with your relationships with others as well as yourself?
So people think I've got like this really high level of willpower because I was able to just quit drinking cold turkey And I can do, I'm usually the typical, like I can go all in on stuff and just stick with it with like really hard rules. And then stuff might creep back in again, but then I can go all in and just shut it out. But alcohol, that last time, I just stopped it because I realized how much damage I was causing and what was happening and where I was headed. It wasn't, let's say it's like dopamine addiction. That's really what I was chasing. And alcohol gave me such a quick dopamine hit. And I was seeking it so much because I just didn't feel good in myself. So I was known for like, if there was a drink in my hand, it was done. So people would still buy me drinks and I would finish it. And as soon as something was in my hand, and I still do it to this day, 0% beers, if I go out and they buy me one, if it's in my hand, it's gone. Like I'll just drink the whole thing without talking. I think it's like a behavior from when we were kids. We were always taught, like, don't talk until you finish your food. So I would just finish everything and then I would have a conversation. I still do it with the kids at dinner. They'll be talking to me and I'll just nod, finish my plate, and then I'll start talking. They're like, you eat so fast, and be like, they're still eating 20 minutes after I've finished and I'm just sitting there completely finished. But yeah, I think the trust has like been, like it's been more willpower than trust. I didn't trust myself to ever even think about wanting to go back to alcohol. Even didn't want to touch 0% beers because like it'll trigger me to go that way again. And then it's been like learning my story. And like a big one, which is part of like the space builders thing, is like collecting proof that I'm showing up as the person I want to be. And that collection of proof gives me the dopamine hit that I need. I don't need to seek out the alcohol to get the fix I want. On saying that, I still fully believe that like emotional eating, emotional drinking is a completely normal thing. It's like so wired into our DNA. But it's weird when coaches say don't emotionally eat. I don't know anyone who goes out and eats cardboard. Like it just doesn't make sense. We all love our food. So it's always been a thing. And we usually, the emotion eating thing is meant to be with a tribe. Same with drinking. You're meant to sit around and talk and that's where you unpack. So, but that's because I'm such an introvert. I was just drinking. I was going out and drinking, but a lot of the times I was just drinking bottles of wine at home, just watching Stargate on TV. Once I started unpacking my story and figuring out where I could attach dopamine, it's only been like probably the last 12 months where BG, my mindset coach, he's like, wouldn't it be cool if you could go out and sit around a fire and have a glass of wine with Kat, knowing that you could just put it down afterwards because you're just sitting there chilling out. And it changed the story in my head from like, I can't drink because I can't trust myself, to like, I can if I want to, I just choose not to, which just feels better and sounds better in my head. It took a lot of pressure off when it happened too, which was because I brought it up with Kat and she was like, you're going to what? So I'm not saying I'm going to do anything, but if I wanted to, I reckon I could be able to stop. When before I couldn't, because I was chasing the dopamine hit. When if I did it now, which is what I do now anyway, if I'm going out to be sociable, to connect with other people, rather than just to go out and get this massive dopamine hit and forget everything that happened.
The reframing
Yeah.
of stories and of goals. That's what I'm hearing right now, which is so
Yeah.
kind of massive. That's massive.
It's such a big.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's such a like. And in when I was an alcoholic, I don't think I would have listened to it because I was like in my 20s, up to 28. I think I stopped when I was 28. This is how far away it is now. I'm so blurry on the actual year I stopped. People ask me and I'll say a different year every time because I never actually remember the date. But I was in my 20s because I met Kat when I was 28, 29. So it was before then. I think if my psychologist at the time tried to get me to reframe stories and stuff, I don't think it would have worked. She gave me tools that would help in the moment where I could like so anyone who's listening, I got like a trigger card. There was like 5 triggers that would set me off to get drunk. One was my mum. She was always like the biggest trigger all the time. If there was patterns in my girlfriend that I saw from my mum, it would trigger me to go get drunk all the time. And it was just like shame, guilt, all these things that would trigger me to go drink. I created this card, so if this, then that, basically. It was like a little bank card, really. If I felt this, instead of drinking, go do this. So if you're feeling this, go do this. And I would, for a long time, I'd sneak off into the toilet and read the card when I was out socializing with mates, and then come back because I would feel the need to want to do it. And that was the tools I used early on. And then now, which is kind of the same thing. That was reframing then, but it was just like more like in the moment. And now it's more like planting the seeds every day. So I just don't really need to even use the emergency reframes, if that makes sense.
You gave the steps without me even asking to. That was perfect. Like you give examples that's perfect. I never thought it, but that's great. That I think that's a really underused tool as well. Is kind of we always hear other things, outside things to help with goal setting, but we don't hear too much about reframing goals, switching the perspective, changing where you're looking at it, changing just overall rearranging what you're looking at right now to see if there's another easier way, a system that you can build for yourself that's more efficient for you rather than going along with a mold that didn't work, that worked for so many other people, but you're not them. So I think that's really inspiring for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think Chris, what you gave us there was like you set yourself up for success by having a plan in a particular situation or with a particular person. I think it's easy to forget in the moment. It's almost like remembering to use your tools is more than like 50% of the solution there. At the time when these things come up, you're not thinking about your tools, right? You're thinking about the situation that you're maybe trying to avoid or trying to skirt by or get by. That's a beautiful reminder of having like the tool with the solution so you have a plan for a particular environment or a particular situation. So that was beautiful, brother.
Yeah. I think like alcoholism is like so much like an escape. We want, like, especially it's probably is everywhere, but in Australia, it's just such a big thing of like, I'm going to get to the weekend and get shit faced so I can recharge for the next week. And even things like coming to the end of the year, the trend has already started. It's like, I just got to get through the end of the year and I'll be all right. And then I'll just go, and then first thing I ask is like, so what happens next year? Is your life different after you come back from New Year's? And usually we go into the same shitty cycles and it goes again. But those conversations, like, I just got to get to the end of the year, start creeping in at like September, and then it becomes like July, and then it becomes like you're calling it out at Easter. You're like, I just got to get through the end of the year, and you've still got 9 months to go. It's kind of like when, and this is when we talk about with space builders too. For me, I had to fully understand who I am, what kind of personality traits and stuff I have, and what I value. And then fully change the stories I was telling myself about the life I was having and the life I was living. Which is like, because especially with social media, which is why I had to get away from social media last year to just reset and recalibrate and figure out what it is that I really wanted. And then, like, Rick and I had an experience on Saturday, which we can go into, where I had this, like, not protective shell, but I had this such a clear vision of my goals. And we had this conversation with these two dudes where I felt like they were trying to shame and guilt us, especially me, on my goals and what I'm so clear on. And even after the call, I was like, I started asking myself, like, are these really my goals? They shattered it so well, which is like I told Rick, it's a persuasion sales tactic where if you get people to feel enough guilt and shame, they will spend any kind of money they can to get out of it, which leads into alcohol as well. If you have enough guilt and shame, you'll spend any kind of money to get out of that pain. Same with food addictions, like binge eating. I did 100% after this conversation. I went into the weekend going, I'm just going to eat whatever I like. I don't care. And I had to go away and journal and play around. I had a big talk with Rick after this call and just to recalibrate. So shit's going to come up for people, which shit keeps coming up for me. And I fall back into those behaviors of like, I am going to escape. That is my shitty shadow self. It's not shitty. It's just my child version of me. Escape, escape, escape. And I had to really work on it this weekend. Just use those tools again to come back as like what I call, and we call it in Space Fields, like the heroic version of me, which is stand up, show up, you can't go and hide now kind of thing. So I had to really work it in there. It was a bit of a tangent, but yeah, it still hits hard now talking about the alcoholism back then because there was so many things that would, because I didn't really have any values or perception of who I was. And I would follow other people's ideas of what I should do, like buying the house. I was told I should do that. And then I'd get it and I had this huge guilt and shame thing. I was like, why the hell have I got this thing? Do I even want this? I wanted to go overseas and instead I bought a house. Stuff like that. Like, it's pretty crazy.
But that conversation was super valuable for me as well. Like, I think it allowed us to see like, who we are and what we're not, what we don't want to be, how we don't want to show up, or how we want to show up maybe probably more strongly. I love the fact that you drop back to your values, and while it was sort of like for me it was like an inoculation. We had some mind virus going on, like the shame mind virus, but the whole thing was I think it made us stronger. It definitely made me think about how shame, which I feel like is like a mind virus to the extent like I didn't even know I was in shame. I stepped into it, it felt weird, but I didn't know what I was feeling until we had the talk. And like as you were explaining like what was going on for you, I was like, oh, that makes sense. Like that was going on for me as well. Like because I couldn't even like put to words like what was actually happening. I was kind of baffled with the whole thing. Like I was like, what just happened here? But brother, I think there was a couple things that exposed inside of me, like brought awareness, some things that I'm still working through, which I'm super grateful for that. Super grateful for you as well. The conversation after, because it kind of helped flesh out like these things that are my blind spots, like total blind spots that had I not had you in the room, I would still be baffled, man. I would still not understand what happened.
Can you give a little context to what that call was and what caused?
Well, Probably
the revealing.
it's probably better. Yeah, it's probably better we don't like give too much detail. But the whole thing was around like I mean, first off, like it works for them. It totally works for them, and like they're successful in that, and like he's my friend, and I'm happy for him. But what I realized is like that's not what we want to be for space builders, both as how we show up on a call with somebody and also like who we want to be as parents. Actually, one of the things that like Chris, you helped me understand, like it's different, especially for you, brother, as a parent. Being a parent and in business, it is almost like a different paradigm. It is like very different perspective on life once you have a child. And talking to a single guy or single people who's trying to maybe coach somebody who is a parent, I think it's hard for them to understand what it's like until you are a parent. And it's just different life situation. But that I think you helped me understand that is pretty very, very apparent after that call. Like, I don't know, they may not understand fully like exactly what it is to be a father, but especially for you, brother, like with your children, what exactly it means to be you as a dad, right? And why you have such strong bumpers or boundaries around your goals or your values. It makes sense, but it's hard to make sense of that if you're not in your situation or if you're not a parent. I think it was very apparent for me actually after.
It's funny you mentioned the bumpers thing because that's what I journaled afterwards.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's like, this is why, like, I think what you're doing, Dustin. I keep in my head. I'm always like Dusty. So Australian slang, you're just Dusty.
No, call me that. That's such a call me. It's been my entire life. I've gotten my last name Sparks, Sparky. Those are all the names. It's
Dusty Sparks.
Totally fair game. There you go.
Sounds like you're a movie actor. So yeah, this call was like, it's like I've learned persuasion techniques in sales, and there's like two camps. There's like the dark arts, which is like persuasion, where guilt and shame, and sales big. Lack of a better person to throw stones at, think of like Andrew Tate. His stuff that he throws out to people, get people to follow him, makes people feel like shit. And that's the point. And not saying that these guys are him, but that's the camp. Where it's just like, to make you buy something, I'm going to make you feel real bad about your decisions in your life up to this point. And then there's the other camp, where it's like persuasion, where it's more of like, hey, we're going this way. Do you want to come with us? This is what we're doing. This is what we want to learn. And the way the call played out was just like, it was kind of like an open thing where we were going into it. Like, we just wanted to see what these guys were doing and see what happened. And it was blatantly obvious to me, because I've been in these sales calls before, that it was a sales call. Straight up. And then so that changes the dynamic of the call straight away. It stops being from like networking to salesperson prospect. So it changes the energy of the call. So I think my energy shifted as soon as I realized. So that would have started like changing the energy for them as well, I feel. But yeah, it just did not go well without going into too massive detail. But they did attack, especially right at the end of the call, they attacked my values personally. And this is where when I was talking to Rick, I was ranting. I was like, this is why we need to get space builders out and about, because like people like, especially dudes, like dudes in their 20s, like your age, Dustin, like, yeah, like maybe don't know their values yet or what they want their life to look like exactly yet. Because it's technically, I went to the autism workshop on the weekend. They're saying now it's not until you're 28 till your brain fully develops and then you can start thinking about this stuff. So it's like in your late 20s. So you might not actually know where you want to go, but you're super vulnerable. Like we've talked about off air, like a lot of dudes in that age bracket don't have that father figure. And you have these kind of dudes like these fellas we talk to come in and make you feel like absolute shit when you already feel like shit, and they're offering you the magic pill to get out of it. And if you don't do it, you're going to be a shit human for the rest of your life. It's super persuasive. So that's why they can do really well. And it's fine. It's cool. It works for those kinds of people. But it's not what I'm after. And it's not what a lot of people are after. And it's the whole thing of like, there's a book called Nick Peterson's Bumpers book, and he talks about in there, like, don't jump into a race you don't want to finish. Which is a lot of this stuff that comes in is like, hey, this works for me, just do my thing. But then you end up finishing at the race they're at. So you end up going where they finish, and you're looking around like, do I even want to be here? And that's where, like, I was rattled big time on Saturday and going away journaling. And I had to take the kids to athletics, so I was juggling the kids at the same time, and they had meltdowns because my oldest has autism. So he had a meltdown. So I had to switch into dad mode to do that while after getting off this call where I just felt like shit anyway. And just had to keep going. And that sort of helped me realign. Is like, this is why I'm not going to sacrifice time with the family to go chase Uber's amounts of money, because my family needs me. It doesn't make sense. And that's where for me, being clear on my values is a protective tool as well. And that's where that whole collecting proof makes me feel good. But I've only just started feeling good today. But this is Monday now, so it's 2 days later. Like, that's how much if you're having these conversations with like mentors or gurus who use shame and guilt to sell, it just fucking hurts. And it just doesn't get talked about very often.
And I think it's when, like you were saying, with my age group not having that kind of paternal figure, we just absorb that like a sponge. We just take that on wholeheartedly, and then we're just like, oh, we're not doing enough. I'm not hustling harder enough. It's X, Y, and Z. I'm not enough. And you can put that in any line, any sentence, and I'm not doing X the right way. And it's a really clear lever that does work, but it is just kind of a cruel one because it does work for all the wrong reasons. And I think to echo kind of what you were saying, it's overused now. I think people are starting to really overtly show that we're so sick of it. I think that time of that kind of strategy is starting to really find its way on the moving out. I mean, I've been reading a book recently on slow productivity alone. I think like the hustle culture, the you not doing enough culture, the get X, Y, and Z amount of dollars and women and cars and houses. I think that culture is finally starting to see itself lower because we're realizing that we don't need all that anymore, and all these kind of drivers of guilt and shame and inadequacy. I think finally those grips are slowly starting to let go. And I think this is a perfect time for people to be like, hey, I'm going on an experience. I'm going on a journey. You can come with me, and when you feel like it's your time to step off, that means that's your journey.
Yeah, so there's two things I wanted Chris just to talk about. Please share more about the bumpers. I think that's super important for people to understand and hear about. And then maybe share a little about empowerment instead of shame. Maybe what's those two contrasting things, right?
I think so. It's to have a conversation around, well, bumpers is like everyone's been temping bowling and You got very young kids, you pull up the bumpers so the ball doesn't go into the gutter. The analogy is kind of the same. So in your life, you want to have these. I think it's so important to have these hard and fast rules for yourself, because we're going to fluctuate. We're going to go from like there's a concept of like going really rigid into a journey, and you're following really really strict rules, and then you swing back the other way because you've gone too far that way. You go all the way back over the flexible, and you just go, I'm going to wing it and do everything, and then you go too far that way, and you go back the other way, and it's just like that's everybody. And the idea of the bumpers is to reduce the bounces. So you got the North Stars up there, the roads going that way. The bumpers are just to stop you bouncing so far, like wildly left and right, and get you moving forward. And eventually, like you're still going to bounce from rigid to flexible, but they're nowhere near as big, and they're not as derailing as usual. Like everyone knows people who've been on the super strict diet, done really well, and they're like, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to go do whatever I like and eat whatever I like. And they go too far that way, and then they come back to a strict thing, and then they go too far that way, and they go back the other way. So it's kind of like the idea of bumpers is to give you a guiding post, so that if you go too far, like if you go outside them, it's like, oh, I've gone too far. How do I get back? And then a lot of the tools I've created and shared with clients and other coaches and stuff is tools that allow you to get back inside your bumpers really quickly, and then you can experiment with going more rigid or more flexible and play around with it, but you're still on track, knowing that if you just stick to these rules, you're going to get to the goal eventually. So, but that always starts with like the North Star, which is part of the mastery program. It's like our first thing. It's like, where are we going? The bumpers don't make sense unless we know where we want to head. And I think the way you talked about empowerment with the North Star is empowerment, I feel, because you're making decisions and saying yes to stuff based off rules and parameters and tools and actions and things that are going to get you to your goal. Because if you go, cool, so my goal's over here, I want to do this, this, and this, but this, and this. Like, so for me, I want to be 10% body weight, but I want to eat whatever food I like with the kids. It makes the choices of what I'm going to do to get there way easier, because it just throws a lot of stuff off the table. It gets rid of keto, it gets rid of carnivore, gets rid of all that stuff, because they're not going to eat keto or carnivore. So it makes my decisions and choices way easier, because that's my goal. That's what I want. 10% body weight, train heaps, but eat every single meal with the kids that I can. Because especially at this age where they are, it's the most important time. So when you come across a mentor, it's like, cool, what's your 2-year goal? Or whatever it is. Where do you want to go? What's your North Star? And then what are your bumpers, which is like, what are your roadblocks? Like, what are the rules we're putting in place to make sure you don't go too far either way? Like, what is the environment we're playing in, and what strategy do we need to use? And then, like, I feel like, you know, you got a good mentor when the mentor's like, cool, let's figure it out. They might not have all the tools, but it's like, cool, but I've got tools that I know that will get you there, but let's figure out how it's going to work for you. And let's go that way. Because then you're learning, like, your North Star and your bumpers create obstacles that you're going to come up against, which are just problems you need to solve. And when you solve them uniquely for yourself, you can pass them on to other people, or you just keep them for you. So it doesn't really matter. But that's how you kind of progress. And that's empowering, I think, which is what Rick and I talked about after this call, is like, I know I've got these like super strict rules about what I want to do for my prosperity, which is wealth career. Like 3-4 hours a day, working on the business, a few calls outside of that to create that $2,500 a week, which is roughly 10K a month. That's really hard, but it creates all these problems that just become games that I have to try and solve, which I feel that's more empowering. That's the fun part. That's the fun part for me, like trying to figure that out. Yeah, it's hard, but I feel like you're so much more empowered when you overcome a challenging thing rather than getting an easy win.
You just added like a whole another level to that.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. That part was, it's hard, but it is like a problem to solve, and kind of gamify it in that way, but it's empowering in that way. And I think about, I guess, part of the empowerment thing, what you I think helped me think about and realize is, like, as a coach or as a mentor, you kind of want to get to a place where you're not needed.
Yeah.
You don't want to always be there or have to be there or have that dependency. formed with the person and you, because that's not empowering the person to make choices, to make mistakes as well, to fail on their own terms, and learn from the mistakes. I think about that. I mean, that's pretty much like a father, like a dad. I think what we want to do for our children is get them to a place where they're able to go out and live their own life, right? Chase their own dreams, realize their own goals, right? So I think it was it was a wake up call again for me. Was a really good realization that, bro, like, yeah, the tools that we talk about in Space Builders actually work, man. Like there's a case for what we do. There's a reason behind why they work for you and why I'm learning how to use them as well. So thanks, brother, for sharing that.
Thank you, man. It's kind of like so tangent. I did an autism workshop on the weekend, so this is going to make sense from what you just said, Rick. And what they taught to us about was emotion coaching. And there's 5 steps to it. And like the big thing they say is like with kids, this psychologist who created this framework, he worked with relationships, and he could pick relationships that would last for 40 years by just talking to the couple. Like he was just that good at it, and he created a book on that. Then he goes, I want to see what these parents do with these kids that are so emotionally well tuned. They know how to deal with their shit. Like they're just really switched on kids. What do these parents do? And he created these 5 steps. And one of the big things he said was like, the faster we go in to fix the kid's problem, the less they actually learn and understand their emotions and are able to regulate themselves. And it's what every parent wants to do. I still do it. As soon as their kid's in pain, I'm like, I want to fix this. And now it's funny because like on the weekend before the workshop, like Kat and I were talking about like this time of year, it's so much like an arm wrestle to get the kids to do stuff. They're just cooked. And they got so much emotion. I'm like, it's cool. Like, this is why we're doing it. Trying to make it make sense for them. And on the weekend, after the call, they had this massive meltdown. I just sat in his room and I just said, just sat with him and was like, yeah, man, it's tricky. It's really tough. And he just had this huge cry. It was a massive cry about just going to athletics because he's introverted like me and his autism plays up. And I was just like, it's very tricky. I get it. It's so tough. I'm here with you, man. And he just burst into tears and he cried for like 30 minutes. And then then he just sort of calmed down and then he was good. That was what he needed. He needed that big regulation. His regulation was that massive cry. And it's kind of like when I read these 5 steps, I was like, these are the workshop lady who's running it, Lisa. She's like, what's everyone's thoughts? And everyone was sat quietly and I looked at her and I was like, these steps are like, duh. They're like so obvious. Everyone laughed and we were like, but none of us do it. But yeah, I wish I had this sheet here because the other steps are all like crazy. But basically it's like, even with coaching, mentoring or whatever, helping a friend, we go to fix shit so much. And it's just like, a lot of the time it's just like, hey, I feel ya. I get it. It's shit. I'm just here for ya. And that's it. When usually I would go to try and fix things because that's my natural thing.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of I think the guidance framework is more around that than actually trying to present consolidative solution. It's more of a co-created space to hold emotion, basically hold experience. It is a co-created space. Whether instead of, and when I think about coaching, it's more one way, right? I think what we're trying to do in Space Builders, it is a two-way. We are just as much as affected or affected by the person we're with, right? And it's a shared experience. And so I think that the beauty of that call we had was it reminded me just the value of space holding.
Yeah.
Space Builders, what we're building, because it is different. It's well, I know more. I think more, or at least our friends are doing it. People that we know, but it's not. It may not be as well used. I think in sort of maybe the coaching space, we're not really.
Yeah.
Well, I don't consider myself like a coach, but kind of in general, the idea behind space building is to build. Well, the whole idea behind Space Builders, I guess, is we build capacity within ourselves, not just for ourselves, but really for ourselves first. But we build space, we'll build capacity for ourselves so we can hold space and capacity for others. And within that capacity, we're not focused on fixing, which is the parental role that I think I naturally gravitate towards as well, like try to fix things, make things better. But we hold space to allow the lessons to come from the hard things in life as well as the good things. So it was such a, like, in the moment, I knew that there was something that we'll get on the other side that was valuable. I just didn't know what it was at that time. But again, brother, like, we've been through some very hard things through building the summit and doing Space Builders. And again, like, it's such a beautiful thing to know, like, you didn't leave, we didn't, like, get pissed off at each other, and we're still here. So it's just another experience. We're just collecting more evidence, like what we're doing. But I'm collecting evidence as for who you are as well, right? I have another pretty kind of massive experience here that allowed me to experience who you are and see who you are and how you think and why you do the things you do, and also like how you are on the other side of that. So it was super valuable for me. Again, man, like, I invited you to that call. That's why I felt responsible for a lot of things, and I couldn't, and I was trying to figure out, like, what actually happened here. So thank you, man, for just being on that call with me and experiencing that, and then on the other side of that, taking me through your experience, helping me understand, like, exactly what happened for you. And in doing that, like, I understand what was going on for me. Like, there's so many blind spots in my life. Like, I need to understand things, or I get to understand things through the people I'm with. Because I'm not totally sure, like, my sense making for myself is not always accurate. It's most of the time it's not accurate. So I need somebody like you to help me understand, like, I did feel that too. Like, so you help me validate my own experience, my own feelings. Because sometimes I don't know what I'm feeling, man. Like, it takes a while for me to understand, like, things that are happening inside me. I can do it for other people, but when it comes from myself, like in a situation like that, it takes time, man. Like, I'm still learning all this stuff as well.
So I think,
beautiful, bro.
Yeah, and shout out to you for listening to me rant after the call. I don't know how long we talked for. So the reason why I bring that up is we talk about the concept of the tribe and the community. I don't think either of us would have figured our shit out if we went off and tried to do it ourselves. Like, journaling kind of does help with that, but I almost think you need someone to talk to where it comes out. Like, when it was coming out, I was frustrated and angry, but because I had to articulate it, it helped me figure out what it is I was thinking and what were those feelings that were, and why did I feel that way. And why did I react the way I did? And why did they react the way they did as well? So it's like something which probably doesn't happen a lot is like the art of conflict. Like, it's going to happen. Like, even if you're going to ask for pay rises and stuff, it's not like it's a conflict, but it's a tough conversation. And disagreements are going to happen. And my big philosophy is I don't want to change people's ideas, because it's their idea. And the same as I don't want people to change my idea, which is like the values, which is, I think, is why I sparked up so much on that call. I was like, you're trying to change my values and my idea. And I was like, that's not right. Everyone should have the right to their own ideas. And you don't have to change anyone else's idea. You don't have to change anyone else's mind. But if they think your idea, if you put forward your idea and it makes sense and they want to come along, cool. Arm wrestling people, it never works out in the long run, which is what Rick and I talked about. Is like, if they do say yes and they come with you, it causes friction from the start, and it's just constant friction the whole way through. And we talked about it, like, if we did say yes to these guys, immediately in my head, my subconscious would go, okay, so we're going to have a weekly call with these guys. Is this what the call's going to be like every week? Why the hell would I want to show up for that? So yeah, it was interesting. It was very, like, such a good learning curve. But I was just saying, like, if I didn't get to talk to you on that Saturday, I reckon I would still be a wreck today. So having someone that you can connect to makes such a big difference.
Yeah. Like, again, I listened to a podcast or famous, to me, a pretty famous like influencer scientist talk about sort of the benefit of kind of doing the journey on your own and the benefit of not being in a relationship. I can totally understand the perspective that he brought up, but at the same time, I'm thinking, man, I disagree though, like because we are like relational beings, like a lot of the healing takes place within relationship, and I think that is what you shared. Great reminder, like the value of the tribe. We space builders is really meant to create a space where there's enough trust and safety built up in relationship where you can unload and share your shame. Actually, I'm realizing like how much of my life is dictated by my shame, and it's all like covertly, right? It's all like underground stuff like I'm not even aware of probably most of the time. Again, like the beauty of the value of that call was like, man, there's some undercurrent of shame going on here that dictating my behavior that I'm not even aware of. It's like how much of my life is being controlled by this unknown like sense making part of my somatic experience, but my mind, my intellect, my thinking is playing out in the background. And the whole, I guess, again, going back to the value of the tribe, creating that space for people. Because I think the value of the tribe, specifically with shame, is sharing it with another person, with another set of eyes, with another person in front of you who can hear you and not run away from you because it's so shameful or it's so bad. The very act of that person being able to stay in the conversation or stay in the relationship or stay engaged in that space that you create, I think it's healing. I think it's the benefit of, it's the way to overcome or not, it's the way to expose the shame, to experience the shame in your body in front of another person. I think that's what makes like the 12-step programs, AA, so powerful and so good, because you're sitting in a room with people who understand you, and yet each story is unique to a great extent, but there's always commonalities in every experience. But the whole thing is like you're able to freely share and know that whatever shared here, is kind of it stays here in that container. And I think that is part of to me, like I think the be the man calls or the relationship aspects of what we want to create in the space builders is really around like being able to hold space where you are like free and safe to come and almost in a way like bring out your shadow, expose these things that you've been carrying maybe for so long in your life that you feel like if I share this and this person knows this about me, then they're not going to be in my life, or they're going to run away, or they're going to look down on me, make me feel even more shameful, or make me feel even more bad as a person. But I think the healing comes when you get to experience, maybe for the first time, like somebody not running away from you, somebody not condemning you for that behavior or that feeling or that thought. And it not only, I mean, it's healing for me. It's healing to even like be on the other side, witnessing that for somebody else, because there's something special going on here, and like it's almost like a privilege to be a part of it, because to me, like I feel like this person is probably not going to share this with anybody else in this manner or in this capacity. But this person sharing it with me, what a privilege, right? What an honor to be here. So yeah. I was thinking about that as well, man. Like I could not have done that without you as well, bro. So thank you.
Welcome, man.
I kind of feel like I missed out on something. It sounds like it sounds like it was quite the tug of war, but at the same time, it sounds like it was very fruitful, and I appreciate you guys relaying this to me, even though I was not there. It's like it's kind of nice to see that. For me, as a young man, it's nice to see men, you guys do share your conflicts. You guys aren't perfect, and you guys do work through the conflicts and the things that you guys go through on a day-to-day basis, just like any other person does. And it gives kind of hope that's like, I don't know, as growing up as a young man, I used to see men not do this in community. Men used to just soldier on, put their head down and work one-on-one. But listening to you two say, hey, having a conversation afterwards about something that was not exactly pleasant, it's like, wow, this is more than possible. and it's nice to hear.
Yeah.
It's different. Like you said, I grew up in the shut up, go get to work kind of thing.
Mm.
So it takes time, and yeah, like a crew. Yeah, I like the idea of like the Be the Man cause. I like the idea of it's like it's a campfire chat.
The tribe.
Bring your problems, put it on the fire. Just share them. Might not fix it, but just get it out, and the emotional release of just getting it out verbally is so big. It creates space in your brain, which is why we created Space Builders. It creates the space in your brain to start unpacking that stuff and putting it into where it needs to go. Some of this stuff doesn't need to be fixed. Like, it's meant to be there. If we didn't feel shame or guilt, we wouldn't have joy and happiness. So those things all need to happen. It's just like, what do we do with it? And what are we going to allow to show up? Which is like we're talking about the shadow version of ourselves and the hero version of ourselves. The more we can get better at like that trigger and that flicking that switch and choosing which one we want to play out our life as, the more we just feel good. And that's like, I was thinking about those guys. I was like, it works so well because it's such anger and hate and shame and guilt driven. You're just running away from those feelings. So you just push so hard and make a shit ton of money because it's a dopamine hit. And if something happens and it stops, you crash hard. And I think it's just like, wouldn't it just be better to go in a direction that just feels good? I keep going back to like, you just feel good doing it. You feel good with what you're helping people with. You feel good with what you're doing. Everything just feels good. And you just walk in the
better drivers.
Yeah, and you're walking in the direction of where you want to go as fast as you feel like you need to. Because you're not running away from anything, you're enjoying it. You're not trying to get there as quick as you can because you're just trying to escape whatever's chasing you.
Naturally set pace that you can continually carry over time, as opposed to a predetermined one that was put onto you by some other person.
Yeah. And Dustin, going back to hopefully the message is one of hope, right? I feel like you have a story, you have a very unique story that I find very, very compelling, and I know you're not alone. Like, if there is an entire generation feeling like without purpose or without worth, even, like, to me, I feel like there's so much more to life than that. I think our hope is that we wanna serve in a capacity of holding space for your generation to become the fullest potential of what you are created to be. Specifically what you were created to be, not who really even to some extent like what your parents want you to be, society's telling you to be. Potential gurus or mentors who may mean well, but like I think what Chris shared, don't run their race, run your race. Start at the finish line of your life, not at the start of their ending, right? Where to get to where they're at. I think it's good to have role models, to people you look up to. I think they're super helpful because until you are able to create that story within yourself or to hold that idea of who you want to be, I think we need people to kind of show us the potential of what can happen, what can be done in a lifetime, right? So I think they're super valuable. But at the end of the day, like, if you're running a race that is not yours and you get to the finish line and you realize, man, I ran this for nothing, or ran this for somebody else and I didn't run it for myself. I think what we want to maybe suggest is like we reframe what success looks like. And for me, and like for Chris, it's pretty simple. Like, for me, it's like waffle breakfast and going on a hike with my daughter. Like, that's the epitome of success. And it's so simple, but I'm sure Chris can tell you, like, there's so much work to have to go to even get there, man. Like I've paid the price to even like make that what I think is successful for me. And it's different for everybody, right? And it's finding that what does success look like for you? What do you want that to feel like? What does it look like for you? And I feel like that there's so much potential that maybe just needs I don't know. In fact, I'm trying to find. I'm trying to understand like what is that experience like? How can we best support you in that way
Hmm?
so you can flourish? So there is a gigantic like light at the end of the tunnel for you guys and girls and women. I think that's what we want to do. We want to support you in that. We want to support your entire generation in whatever way possible because you will be creating the world for our children, right? You will be creating that world for us, for our family and their families as well. So it behooves us to support you and encourage you, empower you, right? To be who you are, who you were created to be.
I think that right there is all that we kind of really want. Is I think I've read enough books where, like you were saying about the gurus, is the disciple shouldn't always want to sit in the shadow of his guru for the rest of his life. He should want to venture off and do his own in the end. It's the same thing like in the trades. You shouldn't want to sit underneath an apprentice doesn't always want to sit underneath his master. He wants to be his own master one day. I think that's the same thing as we just want a model to not necessarily be a copy paste carbon copy of, to have somebody that can facilitate our curiosity in our direction, have somebody kind of water it and nurture it and make us feel like, oh, well, what we want for the rest of our life and what we see for ourselves moving forward isn't dumb, isn't unlikely, isn't unfeasible. Just having, like you were saying, a soundboard of someone who's more experienced, just say like, let's talk about it. Let's grow. What do you want to grow? What is this thing you want to grow? All right, let's work through it. Instead of saying, yeah, that doesn't sound, I've never heard of it before and it doesn't sound like it's likely. That, what you just said right there of helping, that's all we want. Which sounds so little, but to us it means so much.
It's a lot.
I think like the big misconception is like you won't be happy till you get there. And the tools and the things we want to do in Space Builders is show people that you can be happy tomorrow. You can feel good tomorrow and the next day and the next day. Shit stuff will happen. You're just one day away from feeling good again. You don't have to wait to arrive at this magical thing and then all of a sudden you feel good. What we hope is that like the journey, like everyone talks about, the journey is the goal, is the thing. That's the whole point. But we want you to feel good doing it, which is that rewiring of the stories. Some actions you're going to do are challenging. Some things you got to do every day to make the goal make sense and happen will be hard, will be a challenge. But you can change the story to feel good about challenge, which is what I've had to do heaps. Like being a dad, like first world problems, I live in the country, driving 20 minutes to take the kids to school, driving home, go back over. So it's like 40 minutes each way, twice a day. And just listening to Michael Jackson flat stick because Theo's hero music is Michael Jackson. So like that can be like something that will rile somebody up, like absolute, like just ruin their whole day. And I had to, do lots of journaling to sort of just go like, it's cool, just let it go. I can feel good doing this, and I do now. I love all the music, and it's kind of, which is really bizarre to say, the feeling good in the daily actions is the most important. That's what I'm so passionate about. Like, I don't want to give you shit that you hate doing. I want you to feel good doing the thing, like, and enjoy doing it for the rest of your life. So what's the point of doing something if you're not going to do it forever? So I'm so incredibly passionate about that and helping people find those things, because there's so many tools now. We can find lots of tools to make the things work and then feel good doing it. And then you just keep showing up for it. There's no wagon to fall off. You just keep rocking.
That's perfect, because I think my generation, we've just kind of been given the tools that have worked for the old model or for what the model has previous. Just your tools are college, your tools are to relieve stress, are alcohol and going partying and women, the opposite gender, your escape is your cell phone. When that's this much of a solution. That's this much of what's available to you. There's so much more. And just having somebody that's been down this path to give that awareness to us and say, this is so much more than what all that is, and it can help you so much more. That's what we need. That's what we are yearning for.
Justin, your generation is going to experience so much change. probably exponentially change. There's so much going on, and the speed of the rate of change is just accelerating, right? I think what we hope is to provide like almost like an anchor, like a home base, maybe even for people to come back to. It's because like I'm super excited about things you guys will create or have created actually at this point, and will create and will continue to create. That's what I mean. Like there's so much potential there. Yeah. I mean we're grateful to be on this journey with you, Dustin, to understand your
Likewise.
experience
Mm.
and just to go along on your side, right? With you.
It's an honor for me that you guys are willing to do it with me. It means the world, because I don't think that's kind of what we just want, a partnership. We just want somebody just to see us for who we are, not just that's all we really need, and that's all we really wanted. And to have just kind of an open-ended, safe conversation, a good space where we can be seen, heard, helped. That's it. That's it. That's everything to us. And so when you guys agreed to have me on and have these conversations with me and to build all three of us together, that's talk about North Star.
There's another one you said. There's a concept I learned from the Autism Workshop again, and it talks about like how us as humans work, and like as kids we want to go out and experiment and try stuff, which is what we're meant to do. Try and fail, and learn. Our job as a parent is not to restrict them doing that and just let them go. But when shit goes wrong, and they need to have that loop where they can come back and sit and be nurtured and cuddled and loved when shit does go wrong, so they feel safe. And we're more there for like the wisdom, the tools, and the frameworks and those kinds of things. I think I was talking about Rick before or someone, but it's like you get into your 20s and then into your 30s, and if you're missing that person you can loop back with, so you go out and try these things, but you don't have someone to a safe landing to crash and unpack and figure out what you've learned. It's a big piece missing, because you think like you're a failure. But failure is the lesson. That's where a lot of the gaps are. There's like they can go out and try this stuff, or they know they don't have a safety net, so they just don't go. They don't go try and experiment and fail and stuff like that. So they'll stay inside their cave, lack of a better word. And that, what I've found as I'm into my 40s and my parents are now into that age where the flip has happened. Now it's more like my parents are going out and experimenting and trying things and falling over, breaking your hip, and they got to come back and I've got to nurture them and look after them. So it's where is our safety net? Where is our crash pad where we can come back to and just collapse like the campfire idea and go, I went and tried this thing, I went and did all this, and it blew up. Everyone needs that place they can come back and be heard and then unpack the lessons so they can go out again.
Yeah, beautiful.
I think you built that perfect. I think that's where a lot of my generation feels is I think we have all these things we'd like to go do. We have all these things that may not work, that are a risk. And yet I think we have a well enough knowledge that if we go out and we go do X, Y, and Z, there is no place for us to crash and burn. There's no place for us to recoup. There's no place for us to rebuild again. I think it's once we're out there and we're on E and we crash the car and it's out, you're SOL. You're up a creek without a paddle. So it's a lot safer if you stay here. And at least, even though it's not ideal and you're not growing necessarily, you're safe. But we know that if we go out and we crash and burn, and if someone does come and get us, we're going to hear it all the way back home, and we're never going to get encouraged to go do it ever again. And I think that's where we are now. So having kind of like a home base where we feel like we can just, because like you said, failure is just a data point. These are just statistics that you're just learning. Rick and I had a conversation. These are just things, experiences that we just, failures are just like, it's just one step.
Yeah.
Learn a little bit, learn a little bit, learn a little bit. That's all failures are. But I think for all of us, once you fail, you flatline. And it's like, that's so far from the truth.
And it feels big. For some reason, we've all been taught that failure is shit. And I think once we find people we can lean into and fail with and know that's not such a big deal, you progress so much quicker. The rebound is not as dramatic. and it allows you to find your place in the world. And like you said, like the risk, the thing, like the risk can be taken anywhere. Rick and I have talked about this. It's like where you want to put the challenge in your life. Your career could be sorted and you could be fine. It doesn't mean you have to go sack it and go work online somewhere. Put the challenge somewhere, put it into your fitness, put it into your relationships, put it into yourself, relationship with yourself. Like the challenge can be applied anywhere where you go out and take risk and do things and see your threshold, so to speak. And then have that guide, mentor, person that will let you crash into a safety net and go again so you can recharge and go.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
That's it.
And I think to be clear, like it doesn't have to be us, but to be able to find that space, and if we can be like a model of maybe what to look for, but maybe what might resonate with you, then yeah, that's just as good.
Well, I think with you, Rick, I mean, the few conversations that we've had in the past, I mean, it's been healing just for me to voice where I've crashed and where I've been burned and where I felt lost. And like you were saying earlier, these were things that I had never voluntarily give up. They're hard conversations to have, but every time subsequently, they've gotten easier and easier and easier. And I think it then gives me the courage to go out and do it again with not now and also in an expanded fashion of just not this one person, I can do it with another person, and then learn that this is safe and that's not going to crash and burn, and then just kind of keep doing this over more data points, more experiences, more allowing your nervous system to just kind of experience the newness of crashing isn't really crashing. Burning, it's not really failing, isn't flatlining. It's just it's just another step. It's just another direction, another path, another reorienting, another relook at a perspective. It's all there. And I think just having someone to kind of do what you were talking about of the back and forth, using somebody as a soundboard is, I think, the ultimate way, honestly, in growing in that way.
Beautiful. Well, Chris, thank you, brother, for
Thank
coming
you.
on.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes,
That was
thank
awesome.
you.
Sharing.
Happy to do it anytime.
Perfect.
I'd love a chat.
I'm gonna, if you have anything else, go ahead and, where can people reach you?
I'm on, probably the best one at the moment is Instagram, Build for Adventure on Instagram, and probably on X. I think it's CF. Actually, I don't even know what my X handle is. I'll share it to you later. But also, Space Builders on all the socials. Rick and I are on those ones. You can find me there. But yeah, reach out to me anywhere you can find me. I'm on all the platforms, but I don't hang out on them very much. So just message me and I'll get to it when I see it.
I'll link him. I'll put your link in the description. I'll put some notifications out there. I'll make sure that they know where to find you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, sir. Rick, also, thank you for your time.
Yeah,
Always good seeing you guys.
Dustin.
Love these conversations, and I look forward to more. And until next time.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. See
Thanks,
you.
fellas.